Good evening. The Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Board of Trustees is now convened in a committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, October 3rd, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center located at 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, October 7th, 2019 regular board meeting designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we're here to listen to goals, set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operation of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees and not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to the items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting, as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I'd like to also take the opportunity to recognize we have one of our Community Leadership Committee members here tonight, and Stacy Anderson. Hello, Stacy. Glad you're here. The recognitions, board comments, citizen participation, and hearing portion of our agenda will be presented at the regular board meeting on Monday, October 7th, 2019. At this time, we will proceed with public comments portion of our agenda, and I believe there are no one has signed up. So we will move to our reports portion of the agenda. 5A, in accordance with the Texas Education Code and State Board of Education, the reporting of the board's continuing education credits will be announced, and that will be done on Monday, October 7th. 5B, the Student Services Department will provide an oral report on the 2018-2019 Board Monitoring System objectives. And Ms. Dr. Deborah Stewart of IFE of Bumacay.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Henry, Dr. Ogletree, and board members. It is my pleasure to present the 2018-19 Student Services Board Monitoring Goal Report. Student Services supports District Goal 2, which reads, the district will provide a safe, disciplined, and healthy environment conducive to student learning. In 2018-19, the Student Services team focused on 2 of 5 objectives in Goal 2. Objective number 1 was to increase the number of students receiving face-to-face instruction by decreasing the overall number of students removed from class. Objective number 2 focused on increasing the number of PBIS campuses throughout the district. At this time, Ife Ogumake will share data from the 2018-19 school year to support Goal 2, Objectives 1 and 2. Ife?
Okay. Good evening, Dr. Henry, Dr. Ogletree, Board of Trustees. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present to you this evening. To increase the number of students receiving face-to-face instruction by decreasing the overall number of students removed from class, the department focused on looking at disciplinary actions that remove students from the classroom. And the actions that we focused on include in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, placement at the district alternative education program, which includes 2 of our ALC campuses and our special opportunity campus for our elementary students. Also, we looked at expulsion to the juvenile justice alternative education program. In-school suspension actions occur when students are placed in the DMC classroom for a period of time, while allowing the students to attend school and complete their work. In 2018-19, while there was a slight increase at the elementary and middle school levels relating to in-school suspensions, as you can see, the high schools decreased significantly within school suspension actions by almost over 3,000 actions. And with this, that also increased face-to-face instruction for students in the classroom. Similar to in-school suspension actions, out-of-school suspension actions increased slightly at the elementary and middle school levels, but also there was a significant decrease at the high school level by almost 2,000, over 2,000 actions. This is also an indication that with this reduction, that our students are spending more time in the classroom, receiving face-to-face instruction. A discipline placement at the Disciplinary Alternative Education Program, which I said earlier, ALC or SOS, is exercised at the discretion of the administrator as a result of a student committing 1 or more level 3 infractions of the Student Code of Conduct. As you can see, this action was not used frequently by administrators. In 2018-2019, while we had enrolled over 116,000 students in the district, an assignment to the ALC and the SOS was applied only 374 times by administrators. This also helps our students stay in class, which is a common theme that I want to bring up. Now let me move to the mandatories, there we go. Yes. A mandatory placement occurs when students are assigned to the Alternative Learning Center or the SOS for violations that are delineated under the Texas Education Code, Chapter 37.006. Last year, there was a notable decrease in mandatory placement actions. While there was no change at the elementary level, you can see that at the secondary level, we had 72 fewer mandatory placement actions. This chart now shows our students who are expelled to the JJAEP. And our students are expelled to the JJAEP for conduct of Code of Conduct violations as addressed under Chapter 37.007 of the Texas Education Code. Expulsion actions also decreased significantly. As you can see, in 2017-18, we had a total of 78 expulsion actions and last year we had 37 expulsion actions. This also helped support our goal of keeping more students in the classroom. Now I'm going to move to our second objective, which is to expand the implementation of positive behavioral interventions and supports, the PBIS process at all our district campuses. PBIS is a proactive systems approach for creating and maintaining safe and effective learning environments in our schools. PBIS provides a positive structure wherein we focus on the use of strategies that are respectful toward our students. This application of an evidence-based system assists schools in increasing academic performance, increasing safety, decreasing problem behaviors, and establishing a positive school culture. And as you can see on the right side of the screen, those are all examples of PBIS matrices from some of our schools in the district. In 2018-2019, I am so excited to share that 100% of our elementary campuses all utilize the PBIS process. So the 56 out of our 56 elementary schools are now PBIS, along with 16 of our middle schools and 7 of our high schools. Moving forward, our goal is to keep working toward 100% of all our schools using the PBIS process. Now I'm going to move on to talk about some of the supports that we have in place. In Cypher, we have many district programs and support that are in place to help our students be successful and also increase their opportunities to stay in class. You should have next to you a brochure that looks just like this, and it has some of the supports that I'll be mentioning this evening. So feel free to look through that brochure. First is Cypher Tip Line. Cypher Tip Line is an anonymous reporting system that is used by the district students and the community to report unsafe behaviors and concerns. Last year, the district received 3,337 tips through Cypher Tip Line. Another program of support for our students and our campuses is No Place for Hate. No Place for Hate is a school climate improvement initiative that provides schools with a framework for combating bias, bullying, and hatred. Last year, 56 of our campuses and our transportation department earned their designation as No Place for Hate. Project Safety is a district-wide initiative focused on school safety with an emphasis on bully and drug prevention. Anti-bullying and anti-drug lessons are developed by a team of campus administrators and district support personnel. Project Safety lessons are taught in grades K through 12 once a month and revised regularly using input from the safety surveys. Service for Success is a character-based program that allows students who are serving a DAEP placement at the end of the school year to complete their assignment through service in the community. Last year, 90 students assigned to the DAEP successfully participated in the Service for Success program and completed a total of 8,498 community service hours. And those are some of the organizations that support Service for Success. It's listed right there where, you know, every year we try to grow that list, but we try to find places for our students to be able to do community service. Along with the aforementioned programs are many more district supports and services provided to campuses and students, some of which include our district-wide focus on restorative practices. Many opportunities are offered for campus and district staff to receive training. Last year, 133 training courses were offered to over 5,000 participants. Also, there is continuous support by the district 6 attendance officers and classroom management consulting teachers. These individuals help in developing specific trainings for campuses. They help with coming up with student contracts for attendance and behavior. Also, we have our Families in Transition department, and they work very hard and they provide support for our students who are experiencing homelessness, which helps keep we try to keep our students in the classroom by giving them the needed supports that they require on a daily basis. Our guidance and counseling department partners very closely with us. They provide many supports for students in district-wide that include the PALS program. Over the last couple of years, they've also supported the Substance Use Intervention Program that supports our students who are assigned to the DAEP for drug and alcohol violations. They offer parent trainings, they offer anger management and just very specific supports for the students. And of course, the counseling team has just an array of different supports that they provide, and that's just a couple that I've listed up there. This year, the department continues to support goal number 2, and we have added a third objective. And that third objective will, our plan is to convene a committee of campus and district staff. And our goal this year is to develop research-based alternatives for campuses to use in lieu of, when it's appropriate, to use in lieu of out-of-school suspension. And our hope is that once we get all that put together, we'll share that information district-wide with all our campuses. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I thank you again for your attention and the opportunity to present our information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abumake. Any questions? Yes.
When we looked at that number about expulsions to JJAEP, I'm trying to remember the number. I'm thinking it was maybe 33?
37.
Oh,
Yeah.
37. How many of those were related to vaping or controlled substances? Do you know? Or
Well, when our students are expelled to the JJ, it's for a felonious act, which is our level 5, and most of those are really controlled substances.
controlled substances?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Julie Pinball.
When we're looking at adding objective number 3, is there thought behind focusing on the elementary school and middle school levels? Because that's where we saw an increase in ISS and OSS versus the high school, which had I was very pleased to see that decrease, but a little concerned about the increase at the elementary and middle school levels.
And that's a conversation that we've had in the department. Not just, our goal this year is to really do things that front load and, provide some coaching and training and being a little bit more proactive to catch those behaviors in elementary schools before it progresses. So that's our focus this year.
Okay.
Being out there, making sure that our elementary administrators really understand that the code of conduct is not just a tool to use for consequences. It's a great document that has strategies and ideas to support students before we get to that point where it requires an action.
Okay, thank you.
Iffy, on the PBIS, without going into great detail, if I remember correctly, it takes quite a bit of organization for a school to become a PBIS
Yes, sir.
school.
Yes.
Can you just kind of give us a rundown, just very, I don't great depth, but I think people need to know what these schools have to go through to get to the PBIS school?
Well, it's really, truly, PBIS has to be a collective decision made by a school. There has to be a certain threshold of buy-in. I believe it's 80% of the staff have to collectively agree to say, we want to move and go on to this initiative. And the part of the requirement is there's some very specific trainings that are required. And what we've tried to do is try to work with campuses and try to, bring those trainings down so that it's not, and when I was trained, it was 4 days. Now we've cut it down to 2 days. So the campuses have to work at developing a matrix for their school, and it also entails a lot of student involvement. There's monthly meetings that are required. So it's really, truly a collective effort that also takes commitment. It's not a one-time thing, so it really, truly is a philosophical decision and change that campuses have to make. But there's a lot of gains if you are patient enough and committed enough and practice it with fidelity. And that's what we're working on in Cypher, to ensure that while our campuses are PBIS, that it's being practiced with fidelity. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but it does a lot. It takes a lot of commitment. It's a daily thing. You have to have a common language that the students use and the administrators use, the staff uses. So everyone has to buy into it.
Mr. Abubakar, I want to thank you for your work, and I remember when this first came up, and Dr. Moore had said, this is the direction we must go in, and I think you'll been working at it. I appreciate that. Could you, in looking at the numbers, could you share what has been done as far as teacher training or campus administrator training in this area?
Well, Dr. O, we have, you shared that Dr. Henry gave us this charge, I think about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it takes some time for everyone to get to the same point where we're having some very transparent, open conversations. And we've been working at it. We have trained assistant principals every single year, and they understand what the goal is, and they've also been given the tools to then go back to their campuses and be able to take those trainings and then work with their teachers. Our goal this year is to try to put out trainings on our website or through our learning management system for teachers. They don't have to physically come. We're focusing on restorative, culturally responsive strategies and interventions. And Mr. Henry, who has just joined the team, he's leading the consulting teachers. And that's one of his passions, making sure that we get out there and engage in trainings that are out there, so we can bring it back into the district and then make that available to our teachers and our administrators.
The key words for your report, the two words, discretionary and mandatory. What is interesting is that the mandatory has decreased, but the discretionary in the elementary and middle schools has increased. I know you said it's a slow, like a big cruise ship. It's hard to turn around, but is there any other explanation that you think why we would have the increase in this discretionary after the effort, after the vision has been cast in this direction to try to keep kids in the classroom.
And that's what our focus, we've talked about, that would be our focus this year, to do some fact-finding, to find out where some of those actions are happening. At the elementary level, we also find that our students have not gone through the Cypher support and the system. They have not been exposed to it long enough. You see that by the time they get to high school, those numbers are dropped off. Our hope is that that trickles down is quicker to the lower levels. But what we find at the elementary level is the actions that they get into. We're now working with our administrators to look for alternatives rather than use those discretionary actions that remove them out of class for those behaviors that don't warrant that.
Can the data in this area be, I know it can be specific as to the schools, which schools we are having this increase in. Can it also be so specific as to the teacher that maybe has a high percentage than others? Can it be that specific?
Sometimes that happens, yes, sir. And we can drill down to the teacher, and that's where our behavioral support team, consulting teachers, with, of course, direction of the campus principal. Sometimes the teachers lack the skills to be able to get ahead of those behaviors and prevent them. It's about being proactive and not waiting for those behaviors to escalate. So we do have teachers whose behavioral management skills are not as strong, and we try to identify those teachers and provide them the supports that they need.
And my concern, and I know it's yours, Dr. Henry's, in the elementary, I'm sure it's looking good in high school, but if we lose the kids in elementary, then that hurts middle school, and then we're trying to catch up and redirect and high school. So I'm just hoping that something can be done. Let me ask you this too, because we have this great. I know we have training throughout the year, and we have the rigor conference. Teachers who may have a issue in this area, can it be made mandatory that they attend certain trainings, read certain books? Does the contract prohibit that?
And I believe the principals work with those teachers, because we have, and I cannot speak generally, but we have a lot of instances where principals call and they share that they want specific teachers to attend some trainings. So that happens quite often. And the principals know these teachers who need support, and they try to seek support for them.
Thank you. I think you all are really doing a great job. We just, these numbers are concerning. Also, when you do your report, what would also interest me if by chance the increase in a elementary or a middle school also occurred at a PBIS campus, which I would think it shouldn't, but that would really interest. So when you all do your breaking down of this, it sure would be helpful to look at these things.
Can I comment? Dr. Ogletree, when you receive your 9-week report, that data will be drilled down where you'll be able to see those number of infractions, and the campuses. And just a comment about the discretionary placements, we decided to give you whole numbers this year and not break it down by rate or percentage, but we have more students, and for instance, with the elementary, 38 kids, so the percentage may have been less than the 2017-18. And then for the elementary campuses, I would say out of all of our campuses, before a student goes on a discretionary placement, those principals have worked with the students, the parents, they have behavioral plans, teachers go to trainings that the helping teachers provide. So those 38 kiddos that are there, they're on a specialized plan typically when they go to the SOS on a discretionary placement. And at the SOS, they focus on changing that behavior. So it's not just punitive. They look at the reason that they're there and they work on changing that behavior. So those 38 babies before they go, it takes a lot. And the elementary principals are great at determining the length of time for that student. It's not just 30 days, 45 days. One student may need to be there for 10 days because it's time for him to be back in class to prepare for benchmark test, or he needs more support in math. So those 38 babies this year, I will say that there's a lot of one-on-one attention given to them before they are assigned to the SOS.
Could I just add one thing on this subject? I know Debbie and Tom have a question or a comment there, but you know, and you touched on the point, Dr. Ogletree, is we want to intervene as early as possible, because the earlier you change behaviors, the better. And I kind of, if you'll take a look at what we do with reading, I mean, you know, our C&I department can tell you, you know, the earlier we address reading intervention, the better. And then I can tell you this year, and of course I know we have, I think Franklin's back there somewhere, one of our focuses this year was to add counselors to the elementary level to help try to intervene as early as possible. So it continues to be a focus of ours, and our real focus is to try to make sure that at the elementary grade levels that we've solved as many of these types of issues as we can moving forward.
Thank you. All right, I thought you.
Okay, sure. I have a comment, Dr. O, and it kind of addresses some of the things you were talking about. Last week on a campus visit, I visited Hancock Elementary, and I was so impressed with the things that their counselor has put in place, social emotional learning, or SEL, and it's in their rotation where the classes come once a week, and the kids at a young level they're working with them. They have different stations to identify behaviors like anger, and to let them know it's okay to be angry, but this is how we handle that when you are angry, and all the different emotions. And in talking with the counselor, I can see how starting at the elementary level, and just as Dr. Henry mentioned, so young, that hopefully by the time as they go through the grades and they get to a middle school and high school, they've learned how to deal with their emotions, and they have the tools at an early age to learn how to deal with these emotions. They also are a no-hate campus, and they have an ambassador program, and that on my visit, I had 2 of the ambassadors come along, and they were the ones that really did the tour of the campus for me and told me all about all the wonderful things about their school. They do this with every new student that comes into their school. And not only do they take them on the tour that first day, they sit with them at lunch. And I can just see how the positive that will come out of these programs, and I really was really impressed with the programs going on. So I think in a lot of our elementary schools, they are working and developing programs, and it was just, it was such an amazing visit, and I was so impressed with what that counselor is doing to try to help integrate new students, stop bullying, and also help the elementary age children learn what the different emotions are and how to cope with them.
First, good report. Appreciate you bringing it to us. A question Dr. O always asked, but he didn't ask it this time, so I'll go ahead and ask it for him. When you do your data analysis, I know you'll do it by sub-pop and you'll also do it by gender, and as well as looking at it from new students and a number of different ways. I trust that if there are any anomalies that come before you when you analyze the data, that you will bring it before the board to alert us of the anomaly and also identify what steps you're taking to address it.
Yes.
Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you for your report, and thank you for all that you all are doing in this area.
Thank you.
We'll now go to the action items consensus. The board will consider approving the minutes of the September 9, 2019 regular board meeting. All right, we'll go to the non-consensus action items. 8A, the board will consider approving and submitting to the Commissioner of Education a request for maximum class size waiver. Any questions? Yeah. Tom?
Dr. Stewart, about 10 years ago when I chaired the CLC, it was during that unhappy time period where we had to cut 20% of the budget over a 2 or 3 year period of time. And I came before the board, and some of the board members that I presented to at that time are still here. And I pushed for a legislative priority of permitting class size waivers. I remain very sensitive on this issue, knowing that it was necessary for the group I represented to recommend this to the board, but we also knew what we were doing to teachers and students and campus leadership for the sake of saving money. So always take a look at your report in great detail. I have a number of questions, and I think what I'll do is I'll just ask all the questions and permit you to answer it so it becomes a more cohesive answer. If we take a look at Berks, we have a total of 13 student waivers being requested, of which 11 happen to relate to 4th grade. They're spread over 8 classes. Why is the better answer not to hire an additional teacher and have the class size to be 21 each, which could allow for transfer in of students? I'm well aware that Berks remains one of our campuses that often is at maximum capacity, and so further transfers in are not always possible. Does the principal prefer to use additional teacher allocation as an additional resource? Of all the schools listed, I was lazy and didn't bother to look it up, but which ones of these happen to be Title I campuses? And then if we take a look at Woodard and Wells, the waivers are all requested at a certain grade level. It's not as extreme as Berks, but once again, it would appear that we might or might not benefit from an additional teacher. So if you would comment on the questions, but also provide a little background to the extent that you think necessary so we have a better understanding.
I'll do my best. Great litany of questions there. This year, we had, the Texas Education Agency requires that we request an exception when there are classes over 22 students per one teacher. Last year, in 2018-19, we requested 20 class size waivers that impacted 126 students. And this year, we're requesting 15 waivers, and it's impacting 99 students. So to answer the question about specifically, overall, principals have the authority to use their teacher allocations in a way that's best for their campuses. So sometimes, many times, that there are enough teachers to have 22 to 1 in a classroom, and principals opt to do selective grouping. They may have a group of inexperienced teachers, brand new baby teachers, and a group of veteran teachers, and they may decide to have smaller classes with those new teachers and 1 or 2, 23, in a veteran teacher's class so that they can have a smaller class in the new teacher's classroom. Sometimes there are enough teachers, most times or many times, there are enough teachers and principals opt to have a larger or smaller 5th grade class. So they take that additional allocation to have a smaller 5th grade class, which will result in possibly a waiver in another class between K through 4. In the Burke situation, that's exactly what happened. There are enough teachers to have 22 to 1, and I think in that particular campus, in that grade level, they decided to have 2 teachers with larger classrooms, maybe ESL, possibly GT, to make those classes larger or smaller and have larger classes in another area. So they have enough teachers for 22 to 1, and they just do some selective grouping so that they have the best teachers for the students. And they feel that the teachers are experienced and there's still great classroom instruction that's going on. Oftentimes also in October, after we've had an opportunity to balance the classes, principals and teachers decide that it's too disruptive. We have a class of 6 4th grade classes, and 2 of the 4th grade classes have students with 22 or 23. The others may have 21 or 22, and it's so disruptive to move those 2 students. You have to tell the parent, why my child? He's been here since the beginning of the school year, and you're going to move 1 kid. So when you have a strong core group and you bring in a new teacher, those teachers that may have 23 and 22, they would prefer to stay with those class sizes because they've already met the parents, the students are learning, they have friends, and so it can be disruptive to move them. There are times when if they need another teacher, then they do push-ins. They may have an additional allocation. They decide not to create a homeroom, but they have that teacher. They push in for support. They pull students out. They have small group tutoring. And so overall, the principals have an opportunity to make that decision. Did I capture?
Well, let me restate it in my words so I can be certain I understand what you're telling me. So instead of it appearing as if we are robbing resources from a school by having the waivers, in fact, what the intent is to provide greater flexibility and perhaps having resource allocation at the hands of the principal, where the principal believes that resource allocation can be better used for student attainment.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart.
You're welcome.
All right, can we move this to consensus? Great explanation there, that was really, thank you. 8B, the board will consider approving the 2019 Harris County Protective Services interlocal agreement with the Harris County Protective Services for children and adults. Any questions? Can we move this to consensus? All right. 8C, the board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item, and that is the one charter bus and travel agency 2 events for students and staff, 2 grease trap and sand oil solids interceptor line cleaning, 3 pharmacy technician and CPR certification programs. Can we move this to consensus? Yes. Mhm.
Looking at the, all the different, charter bus, groups that we're giving awards to, can I safely assume that their safety records and all of that is investigated?
Yes, ma'am. That's part of the RFP too. They have to certify that, and then we also monitor it as well.
Okay.
Any other? Can we move this to consensus also? 8D, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. BBE local, board members, authority, revised. BDD local, board internal organization, attorney, add. BJCD local, superintendent evaluation, revised. CI local, school properties disposal. CRB local, insurance and annuities management, liability insurance. This is a delete. Any questions? Can we move this to consensus? All right. Item 8E, the district will consider a level 4 appeal, weary of a level 2 decision, and we will go into closed session for that tonight. And the superintendent's briefing portion of the agenda will be on Monday. We need a motion to go in closed session.
Motion.
Second?
All right. All those in favor? Aye. We're at the conclusion of tonight's agenda. We will go into closed session and after that come back out, but no action will be taken tonight. Thank you.